We're talking to underserved entrepreneurs and economic leaders about small business growth. That's next on Nevada Week.
Support for Nevada Week is provided by Senator William H. Hernstadt, Cashman Equipment, and additional supporting sponsors.
Well, welcome. I'm Kip Portenberger, and thank you for joining us this week on Nevada Week. Well, Governor Sisolak wants a bigger stake in small business to drive Nevada's economy, and a growing number of women, people of color, and low-income residents are becoming small business owners. Well, on this show, we're going to take a closer look at the challenges underserved entrepreneurs face, both to get to their business off the ground, but also to grow their business beyond what is considered a startup. And then we're going to discuss what supports and what strategies our state has to foster a diverse and a robust small business economy. Well, to help us shed some light on these issues, please welcome Jerrie Merrit, Senior Vice President at Bank of Nevada, Medin Gebrezgier, co-founder of Revive Brands Co., Jonathan Santos, also co-founder of Revive Brands Co., and Kristopher Sanchez, Interim Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Economic Development. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Chris, I want to start with you. So the governor has said, and I quote, small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Why are small businesses so important to Nevada's economy?
Well, first and foremost, we have about 270,000 small businesses in our state, and they employ about 487,000 people. And when we think about the resilience and vibrancy of our economy, we're really talking about the resilience and vibrancy of our small businesses. If they succeed, Nevada succeeds. And so therefore, they are the backbone. The governor, in saying that they're the backbone and the engine, is really, it's an apt comparison, because we want them to be successful. We want to be able to build that resiliency. And at the Governor's Office of Economic Development, we have many, many programs that are aimed at small businesses and helping them be successful.
And I know that the focus on previous administrations, governors of economic development, have been to kind of focus more on the corporate end and bringing big business in. Why the shift now to small business?
Well, there's a couple of points there. So, Governor's Office of Economic Development and the companies that we've assisted, about 92% are companies that have 100 employees or less, and of that, 78% have 50 employees or less. And, you know, we have a number of programs, from the State Trade Export Promotion Program to the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. One is a export promotion program that's funded through the SBA, about $250,000 grant. The Procurement Technical Assistance Center is a staff of 6 that's funded by the Defense Logistics Agency, and then helps companies, small businesses, go out and get contracts with state and local government. And then we have the Opportunity Fund, the SSBCI funding through the Treasury Department, as well as VCAUS, the Valley Community Opportunity Zone, all of which are state or federal programs that bring resources to bear down to our small businesses throughout the state.
Great, and I think we'll talk more about the specifics of all those programs in just a sec. Jerrie, beyond the economic benefits, the intangible benefits of small business, more connected to the community, or what are some of the other benefits that we see that small businesses bring to a neighborhood or a community?
Well, small businesses are actually who we are in Nevada. If you think back to 2009, 2010, when we had a downturn in the economy and many jobs went away from corporate America, there were actually individuals who made a major decision that I am going to be a small business owner. And those individuals are the ones that is actually driving small business here in the state of Nevada.
And Chris, we talk about gaming a lot as kind of the main economic driver, but we got pro sports coming into to the Las Vegas Valley as well. Right. IT and cybersecurity is talked about a lot. Are there sectors that we're seeing predominantly or more small business growth in?
Yeah, so you name a few. As you know, as the economy is doing well in the state, and our primary industries are doing well in mining and hospitality and gaming and tourism, so we see growth in those industries. But we also should think about companies that are really focused on new technology as well. So unmanned systems, robotics, artificial intelligence. As our economy grows and as our industries grow and change to meet new demand and the new technologies in those industries, we're focused on ensuring that those types of companies can find a home here in Nevada as well.
Now, Jerrie mentioned that small businesses kind of grew during the last recession we had. We have some talk of a recession coming. Are small business more recession-proof than bigger business?
You know, it's a great question, and many of the programs that we have at the GOED are focused on building that resiliency piece. So if I may for a second talk about the State Trade Export Promotion Program, for instance. We know that companies that export perform better in every market in which they participate in. They hire more people, they pay a higher average hourly wage rate. And so that's one program where if we can help diversify the market that a particular company has, whether it's within the U.S. or internationally, we know that that's going to be a stronger, more resilient company. And if we can do that in economies of scale, then we'll strengthen our economy. The Procurement Technical Assistance Center is the same sort of approach, but for federal, state, and local contracts. So again, we're diversifying the company's ability to expand their market share for their product.
Now, Jerry, let's talk a little bit more about just barriers that small businesses are facing. What are you seeing, especially at Bank of Nevada, who focuses so much on small businesses? What are some of the key barriers you're seeing that are really limiting either that initial growth phase or piloting something or actually growing up to scale?
Access to capital, number one. So as a small business actually gets started, they need that capital no matter where they are, whether they are coming from being part of an existing business already to starting up a new business. Access to capital is always the largest barrier for a small business.
And John, you are definitely a small business here, Revive Brands Co.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit, first off, just about your business? What does your business do?
Yeah, so primarily our brand designs and manufactures products, sportswear, sports equipment products. The basketball bag is one of the ones that we designed and created, which we got on Steve Harvey's Thunderdome and have been able to sell pretty successfully. To kind of go through Jerry's point, yes, access to capital at the start of the business. I started this when I was a teenager, right out of high school. Medin and I met at the college. So at the time, what college was that? At the College of Southern Nevada.
Yep.
So we started it. We had a Business 101 class, and I had this. We put together this business plan over the course of the semester. And at the end of the semester, we had this business plan that said we were going to make $5 million, within the first year. And so we went to a bank, and I went to a bank and I said, I want to get a loan to start this business. Look at how much money we're going to make, right? And of course, the answer was no, you cannot get a business loan because you don't have the required assets or like whatever it is you're requesting. You don't have what it is, right? So the only way that I got it started, luckily I had a good job, and the way that I was able to get it off the ground was to take out a personal loan, and I used that personal loan to actually start the business, which had a pretty high interest rate. And of course, as new businesses and entrepreneurs learn very quickly, even though you have some access to capital, you may not know exactly what you need to know to grow that business. So it was a lot of learning experience over the years to really figure out where our market was and what we were going to do to really expand it.
And Jerry, you're sighing. Is this something that we see a lot in small business growth,
Yes.
taking out that personal loan?
Yes, that personal loan is usually a huge challenge for small business owners because even after the business is up and going, you still have that on your personal credit. And quite often, a small business owner will make the business go forward, and they do not have the ability to pay back that money to themselves that they borrowed. So then that challenge their credit score. And of course, your credit score is a huge part of you being able to borrow money, not only personally again, but for your business.
So Medin, beyond the personal loan and kind of starting the business up, we didn't mention, but I've done some research on you. 2011, the business was founded, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we've got about 8 years of business now. What's day-to-day like? Is this your primary job, or do you all have other jobs and this is kind of your secondary thing?
Well, from the jump, Jonathan and I wanted full control over the direction and development of our company. We knew that there was plenty of opportunities out there for partnerships with powerful entities and people that would want to take us on just because for optics or for any other reason, but we wanted to create something that would be a staple here in the city, and Revive and the tagline, wake up and win, and all that. We want to be a part of the growth of the city of Las Vegas. So with that in mind, we had to make a lot of sacrifices, including how we went about the company's financials, and we had to sacrifice a lot. Personally, we had to use our own personal funds from work. A lot of times we were broke. We messed up our credit. We went out in the public and just started selling the bags that we were making. Sometimes it didn't sell, sometimes we failed. And so over the years, we had just been taking hit after hit, but we kept coming back. You mentioned resiliency. And we just decided to keep pushing forward. So here we are now with a company that's a lot more robust in terms of what we are able to create, but still with a lot of room for growth in terms of how we want to execute.
And is that barrier then still capital? Are we really struggling to get the capital?
I would say so, and it comes from the fact, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, just to be completely honest, is that there was a lot of mistakes made financially early on into the company. I mean, you know, a bunch of guys growing up here in Vegas, and we took out loans, messed up credit, took out credit cards, you know, that kind of stuff really was a stumbling block for us. So now trying to get back after we're grown and we've developed this brand and try to get a loan has been, or any kind of financing has been tough.
So Jerry, we're hearing some interesting things here, right? We don't have capital, we've made some mistakes, but we're very resilient. We're out in the community, we've been on national programming and things like that, so we've got some awareness. In Nevada, what opportunities do we have for small businesses that are kind of dealing with these types of issues?
Well, we are fortunate enough, as Chris had mentioned earlier, that through the state of Nevada and through GOED, there is the Nevada Opportunity Fund. The Nevada Opportunity Fund was created by Senate Bill 126 to be able to give opportunities to small businesses such as these young men that are starting their businesses. Not only that, if you are a startup company or a startup business and you just want to go into business, the Nevada Opportunity Fund actually have a certain amount of dollars that are actually set aside just to help businesses that would like to start up. But for these young men that have been in business for a while, that have gone through all the challenges that they've talked about, and I think over the years we've even had the opportunity to talk about some of them from a banking standpoint. The Nevada Opportunity Fund is there to give them kind of an injection to get started. Number one, we no longer look at the business score. That business score stops many small businesses from being able to move forward. We actually take your credit score, your personal score of 625. You could even have had a bankruptcy along the way. But if you've been able to reestablish your credit and get your credit score back up to 625, and when this program was actually put together, the reason we use that as a baseline is because we know that small businesses have done the things that the two of you have, that they were totally unaware of the things that they needed to do so that credit was actually hurt. So we said, okay, 625, you rebuild your credit score, so let's try to help these small businesses move forward.
Mm-hmm. Beyond that, what else do you need to qualify or be eligible for this?
Well, here's the big part. How about a business plan? Mm-hmm. The business plan is huge. And the reason the business plan is such an important part of the Nevada Opportunity Fund, because many small businesses will not have the cash flow to be able to cash flow the loan that they're going to be asking us for. That is usually one of the biggest challenges. You know, they're actually making money, but the money that they're making will not enable them to be able to come to the bank, borrow a loan, and be able to pay it back. So within that business plan, we use the projections. So to have a very solid business plan that says, I project this is how much money my business is going to make in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years. Okay, and we take those numbers and use it as your cash flow instead of the financials that you would normally have.
Now, Jerry and Chris both, we're talking about small businesses that maybe don't have extensive education in business, or maybe they've learned through some of their mistakes, but yet they don't have the essential skills you might need to be able to put together a big business plan. What kind of resources are available within our state to be able to support things like that, Chris?
You know, there's quite a few. And one of the things that we do at GOED is we serve as a connector and connecting people. And, you know, in all of our communities across the state, we have very vibrant chambers and regional development authorities that focus on business retention and the growth of businesses. And we also have a lot of programs at the federal level through the Small Business Administration. Often what happens in the story that you shared is similar to a lot of stories we hear about, but it's just finding those access points. and making sure that people are aware that those programs are there and that those resources are there. But what we need to look at is, especially as we move forward, what the gaps are in that ecosystem, how we address those gaps, and how we make sure that there's handoffs as companies start to progress and grow to make sure that they get that early stage capital, that they continue to be well capitalized as they go through their growth, that they can develop a meaningful business plan, and make sure that they've got a mentor and a partner to walk them through those steps along the way. And the great thing is that we have a very entrepreneurial community and spirit in Nevada. And so it's, we have the raw material and we have all the knowledge here. It's just a matter of making sure that we structure that in such a way to make sure those access points are available and open and people know where they are.
And I want to come back to the awareness side of this, John. Let's start with you. We're talking about a lot of resources here. Were you aware of these resources before we were actually in studio or prepping for the show?
Right. Well, when I first started, after I got my personal loan, I was aware of the SBA and some of the business counseling that was provided by SCORE and the SBDC. Mm-hmm. So that was after I got the loan, and they told me, "Why did you get this loan?" And I said, "Because I thought this is what I needed." And they said, "You could have done it differently," right? So those resources were available after the fact. That I heard about it through the college, actually through the College of Southern Nevada, and we actually started using them. So we found a lot of good mentors in there, but the main thing is that a lot of them were not in the certain industries that we were in, but they did provide really good feedback. But I think as we were young and kind of like, we're like, okay, well, this person doesn't really understand what we're trying to do. We didn't realize that they did understand what they were trying to do, because we were young. We didn't think that they knew that they didn't know who we were about, right? But that's not the truth. Now looking back, and every time I get to meet with people that are part of those programs, I'm like, wow, they're really insightful in regards to what they have to say. But when you're young and you're just starting off, you think you know more than they do, and that's not always the case.
Medin, did you want to?
Oh, well, I was just going to say that misconception is big time. You think you know everything that you need, and a part of it is just the information that you don't have access to when you're starting off. So I just wanted to make sure that I really gave a shout out and appreciation to the College of Southern Nevada, the leadership, staff, and faculty that's there, because we learned so much from not only the business department and Kevin Rayford, but from every single department was helpful in our success. So I think that was really critical, getting information to start off.
And then Jerry, beyond CSN then, so if you are a business and you're in a situation, either you're in the early stages or potentially trying to grow and scale up your business, and we're talking about a lot of nuances here depending on what your business is, what's the best access point to then kind of get started and be able to navigate this system?
I would say start with SCORE. If you go into SCORE and just kind of throw your hands up and say, I am here because I either want to start a business or I'm already challenged with your business, there are counselors there that, like you said, that would totally understand. They may not be very versed in what your business is today, but they understand all the details of actually starting and running a business. I have referred through the Nevada Opportunity Fund small businesses to SCORE. Number one, to start with their business plan, to make sure they understood their business plan. Because many small businesses says, oh, I can get a business plan. They'll go online and they'll actually fill in the blanks, to actually create a business plan. But they do not understand what they were actually creating. So that's the help you get from SCORE. I have referred small businesses to SCORE that have come back to me later and said, Ms. Jerrie, I'm not ready. And I didn't understand that I wasn't ready until I sat down with a SCORE counselor, and they were able to help me understand why I want to start this business, what the challenges will be, and if I should actually move forward.
And when you get to that stage, is that just you just put a hold on the loan at that point?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Like I said earlier when you asked me the question, key, the business plan. The business plan is like starting to leave the country, and you've never gone before. So what do you need? You need a plan, right? And that's what a business plan is to any small business that want to start. And quite often, an individual would say, oh, I did this for the corporation that I worked for the last 20 years. So now I am going to do it on my own.
Yep.
Even for those individuals, I would say, do not get started unless you have your own personal plan of how to get it done.
Now, we have $1 million in the Nevada Opportunity Fund. Is that enough to grow business in the right way? I mean, we're not talking about every small business has access to these funds. Beyond that, is there a way to grow this within the state, or are there other federal programs or local programs where we have similar opportunity funds that we could have access to?
Well, and Chris talked about earlier, most of them would actually be through the state, but the one now that I'm most familiar with, is the Nevada Opportunity Fund. And back to the question, is $1 million enough? Someday it will not be, but now it is, because it's actually a revolving fund. For every single loan that we make on a monthly basis, that small business will come in and they will make their payment. And when they make their payment, it goes back into the fund, which actually give us dollars to be able to lend to another small business when they come in.
Now, Chris, you mentioned opportunity zones. This goes back to the federal Trump administration's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and opportunity zones were identified there. Do you foresee, I know this is still kind of somewhat new, but do you foresee some of these opportunity zones really being areas where entrepreneurs can grow?
We sure hope so. I mean, the program is new. They're yet to be proven. There are some models around the country that we're looking at in terms of structuring growth in the community to capitalize on that opportunity that those zones present. But there's still work to be done, both at the federal level and then subsequently how we integrate that into our framework for economic development in the state.
And at the state level, what might we see in the next couple of years, both within the governor's office, but then also at the legislative level?
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, talking about small businesses, as I mentioned, the ecosystem, and really understanding where those gaps are. We want to make sure that, as we're talking about today, time and money, the two most important things to a small business. And we want to intercede and make sure that they can get the capital, but we also want to save them time in the process of development and not having to make the same mistakes that a lot of folks make when they partake in this endeavor and start that process. As we get into the next iteration of these types of loans and everything, it's learning from what's worked and what hasn't and how we can do a better job. Also, we have a very low unemployment rate across the state, around 4%. I think with that in mind, we need to look at economic development moving forward and how we structure our incentive programs to match the intent that we have in bringing high-tech companies into Nevada and really focusing on the technologies that are going to drive our community forward and making sure that we are focused on education and workforce. Education and workforce are key, are central to any economic development plan we may embark on. And so you'll hear a lot about that and making sure that we're preparing our workforce for 21st century jobs. I mentioned robotics and artificial intelligence and autonomy. Those technologies are driving a lot of changes in our primary industries, and we need to be prepared for that.
And Jerry, let's talk about the corporate policy piece of this too. We mentioned that banks aren't necessarily giving loans to more underrepresented populations, especially new businesses. Can we change policy within a bank to maybe open things up and be a little bit more accepting or pliable with these types of loans?
Well, that will actually come. Hopefully we'll get a little relief from the federal level, because you have to take in consideration that all banks are actually governed by the Federal Reserve and, of course, the FDIC. So there are certain guidelines that banks just really can't step outside of and actually make loans to small businesses. As far as policies are concerned, I am almost positively sure that all banks are constantly taking a look at their policy to see how they can actually help small businesses in general. But as far as the federal end of it, I do feel that as we grow as an economy, it will kind of loosen up just a little bit so that we can, but there are certain guidelines that financial institutions have to stay inside of in order to be within the guidelines of the FDIC and the Federal Reserve.
John and Medin, it sounds like you are eligible for a potential loan here at the Opportunity Fund, so we want to follow up with you and kind of see how that goes and how things develop. But we just have a couple minutes left. John, I'll start with you. Advice for the other small business owners and entrepreneurs who might be watching right now. What's the one key thing you'd like to impart to them? So
the biggest thing is that, we discuss business planning a lot, and I think it's very crucial, but I also think it's very intimidating at first. Depending on your skill level or your, it's a lot of writing, right? It's a lot of planning. So I would really advise them to look into the lean canvas business model, which is a great one-pager type of thing, which walks you through some of the main questions, which will then allow you to actually take some sort of action, right? Not like an action like taking out a business loan, but it'll allow you to take action and maybe starting to develop the product in a small scale, on a smaller level. Instead of wanting or needing, $50,000 to develop this product, you may be able to do 3D printing on it, right? And actually develop it on a small scale to see if it's going to work. And that might only cost you a couple $100. So the lean canvas business model, so you can kind of set up the direction of your business or your brand, is going to be key. And then start small and just start prototyping those designs. Start showing it to the business counselors at SCORE so they can start envisioning maybe where you are going to go with that. And then maybe they'll be able to direct you on how to write a better business plan, and maybe they'll connect you to Jerrie and what funds are available for that new idea and concept. And then the second thing is just always have really good people around you. Try to get involved with as many like-minded individuals, entrepreneurs, mentors that have done something like you're doing or that are in a similar space, but they're all progressing towards something greater. I think Las Vegas is a very unique city, and growing up here, I've seen how the community really functions, right? It's a very transient city, but I think more recently it started to develop a community, and I think through the high-tech jobs and sectors that are coming in, we're going to have a more established community, and part of it is just going to be about finding your niche and where you fit in it, and try to get that mentorship before you even put any money down.
That's wonderful advice and great advice around the table completely. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, as always, for joining our discussion on Nevada Week. Well, please visit our website to watch this episode again or access resources discussed on the show. Also, if you have a topic or issue that you'd like us to explore in a future Nevada Week, we'd always love to hear from you. So find us on social media or email us at nevadaweek@vegaspbs.org. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next Nevada Week.